All right, welcome to the Explainer. Today we're digging into some pretty startling source material that lays out what it calls a two-vector Agoge. Now, you might hear the word Agoge and think of the intense, rigorous training of ancient Spartan warriors, and you'd be right. But here, that term is used to describe what the documents allege is a highly coordinated, two-front strategic campaign, one that's aimed at fundamentally reshaping a nation. So let's break it all down. So let's start with this question, because it really frames our entire analysis today. On the surface, mass migration and gun control. They seem like totally separate political issues, right? Fought in different arenas with different goals. But what if, and this is the key question the documents pose, what if they're not separate at all? What if they are strategically linked? Well, that's exactly what the material we're examining argues. It puts forward this idea that these aren't disconnected events, but are actually two vectors, two lines of attack, you could say, of a single centrally integrated strategy. It's a huge claim for sure, so let's see how this argument is actually constructed. Okay, here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start with the big picture, this two-vector strategy. Then we'll dive into Vector 1, the migration pipeline. After that, we'll unpack Vector 2, the architecture of constraint. Then we'll look at who the sources identify as the central integrator, and finally, we'll see how it all supposedly connects together into something they call the Hydra. So let's start with part 1, the two-vector strategy itself. The sources describe this as a pincer movement. Now, that's a classic military term for an attack that hits from two different directions at the same time, designed to squeeze and converge on a single target. That's the analogy being used here for these two seemingly separate operations. All right, moving on to the first vector. The source documents map out something they call a 5-stage migration pipeline, and they describe this as a very deliberate, highly managed process for moving large numbers of people from one place to another. And here are those 5 stages laid out. According to the documents, it all starts with the source, where the tech and the people come from. Then it moves to finance and facilitation on the ground. Next, it addresses what's called threat ingestion, or vetting failures. And it all culminates in the final stage, anchoring these new populations with legal support inside the U.S. So, where does this all begin? The analysis points to Unit 8200, which is an elite Israeli intelligence unit, often compared to the NSA in the U.S. It's described in the material as a de facto talent incubator for the global tech industry. So you've got this alleged pipeline of talent with really advanced skills in surveillance and data analysis, moving directly from state intelligence into the private tech world. And this slide really illustrates that alleged pathway. It's not just a few random people. We're talking about major companies like Palo Alto Networks and Checkpoint. The sources also highlight this one venture capital firm, Team 8, which was actually co-founded by the former commander of Unit 8200. Their entire business model is apparently built around commercializing this specific pool of talent. Okay, so where's the money coming from? According to the documents, it's a two-track system. On one track, you have these anonymous donor-advised funds, DAFs, which they describe as a financial black hole because it's hard to trace who's giving what. And on the other track, you've got direct, documented grants from wealth tied to these very same tech firms. Like, for example, funding for the resettlement agency Hayas, allegedly coming from Palo Alto Networks and Google. So now we get to the facilitation stage. The argument is that these well-funded NGOs, like Hayas, are essentially on-the-ground operators for an official state policy. And that policy, which the documents call controlled flow, isn't about stopping migration through dangerous areas like the Darien Gap. It's about managing and even accelerating it. And that brings us to the final stage of the pipeline. This is where it moves from physical movement to what the documents call lawfare. The claim is that this same network then provides legal services to anchor people inside the U.S. They allegedly use a tactic called removal defense to systematically fight deportation cases in federal court. Now, this is a crucial point, according to the sources. The scope of these legal services. This quote here is supposedly from the official website of SOAR, an Oregon-based resettlement agency. And look at this. Its list of who they serve explicitly includes individuals with criminal histories. The implication here is that the network is structured to legally defend even populations that might be considered high risk. Okay, let's pivot now to the second vector. The documents use a specific case study for this, Oregon's Measure 114, a really comprehensive gun control law. They call this whole vector the architecture of constraint. So the sources map out what they see as a really clear chain of influence here. You have a national group, every town that provides the template for the law. The biggest cash donor to the campaign? The Ballmer Group, which is tied to Microsoft wealth. The state police get the job of actually implementing it. And then the technical platform, the host for the new gun registry, is Microsoft's own Azure cloud platform. And this slide really visualizes the core argument for this vector. It's what the documents describe as a closed loop. You have private wealth linked to a Microsoft co-founder allegedly bankrolling the political effort, and then you have the corporate infrastructure of Microsoft itself providing the technical backbone for what that effort achieved, funder and host all coming from the same nexus. The documents really sum it all up with this quote. They call it the aletheia, or the truth. It's this idea of a corporate nexus, where private, ideological funding and corporate technical power are, according to this analysis, perfectly aligned to produce a specific political outcome. Okay, so we've mapped out two pretty complex and powerful systems, right? One for migration, one for gun control. So the next big question the sources ask is there a link? Is there a central player that connects Vector 1 and Vector 2? And this is where the analysis points the finger directly at one corporate entity. It identifies Microsoft as this central integrator, claiming it has material involvement as both a key funder and a technical host in both of these seemingly separate campaigns. To back this up, the analysis then maps out Microsoft's board-level connections. And as the source material outlines, these alleged interlocks tie Microsoft's leadership directly to major players in immigration lobbying, like FWD-US, global policymaking through the Council on Foreign Relations, and the absolute highest levels of the financial world. So that brings us to the final section of this analysis, where it attempts to synthesize all of this information into a single, interconnected system. A system that the sources give a pretty ominous name, the Hydra. And this slide really tries to visualize that whole system. The argument is that Microsoft acts as the head of this Hydra. It's linked private wealth funds, key players in both the migration and gun control vectors. Its corporate cloud hosts critical data infrastructure for both, and its board connections allegedly link the whole system to the worlds of big finance, big policy, and big lobbying. So what's the end game here, according to this analysis? The claim is that the goal isn't just about erasing physical borders. It's about replacing them with a brand new system of global control, a digital border built on things like biometric ID and operated by the very same network that is allegedly facilitating the crisis in the first place. And that brings us to the final, and I think you'll agree, very provocative question that this analysis leaves us with. When a physical border is erased, who controls the new digital gates? It's a question about infrastructure, power, and who gets to hold the keys to this new system. And that's all for this explainer. Thanks for joining us.